It will take some time to record. Yeah, now I start.
No. Okay, we can wait for 5 more minutes. I think then
Okay.
we can start.
Oh yeah, sure.
So others can join
Yeah, others can join. Then we can start.
because it is weekend. So
Probably it is a sleep time for many.
Yeah,
it is sleeping time for yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
I
Sleeping
am.
time for all.
I am also feeling a bit sleepy.
You are at
Bit,
office,
bit,
no?
Yeah, I am at office. But Saturday is our holiday.
Okay, fine.
but office is the best place to work.
Yeah. You
Sleep.
know, na, my 1 year kid is
So
there at home.
Okay, yeah, I can understand.
okay, for participants, I want to say that you will be getting a feedback link after completion of this event, maybe today or tomorrow. And after that, you will be getting your certificate in your email. Okay, you will find as attachment because it is from TechCube, so we have to take permission, many permissions from them. So you will be getting within couple of days. Okay, so सर्टिफिकेट आपको एक दो दिन में विल प्रोवाइड आपके ईमेल पे आपको मिल जाएगा और फीडबैक लिंक आपको मिलेगी यू हैव टू फिल दैट लिंक
Okay, sir.
so Arpit sir how is weather there
Yeah, weather is fine. It's a bit raining yesterday.
yeah
It's
So
cloudy
here
now.
the rainy days
it's
are
cloudy now, but
started
because of rain yesterday, it's humid today.
Yeah, same
here
here, sir.
daily it's raining cats and dogs in the evening daily
Yeah, Delhi.
from 3 4 days
Mhm. That monsoon is coming in a
Yeah,
yeah
week
yeah
or so.
almost it does.
For the gap filling, can I play the IIRS documentary? What is the institute? Indian Institute of Remote
Yes,
Sensing. We have
yeah
made
yeah
some
sure, sure, sure,
documentary.
sure, sure, sure. It's our
yeah sure
pleasure
sir
to be.
sure
Sure, sure.
Okay, just a minute. Uttam, the video is coming
Not now.
now. ISRO sign.
Wait a minute. Wait. No, it's not coming.
Now,
Yeah. Yeah, it's coming. Yeah.
what about sound?
Sound is not coming.
How to share the sound?
Slightly, it is coming. Maybe. Just
Okay, or what I can do, I can put my earphone to the mic.
yeah, sure.
Now it's coming.
No, voice is not coming. Very slow. Yeah, it's slightly coming, but its voice is breaking.
Okay, it is a faster sound actually.
Okay.
Is continuously evolving into
Yeah, now it's coming.
premier
Now it's
internationally
okay?
renowned institute
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah.
building research in the field of remote sensing, geoinformation science, satellite positioning and navigation technologies for natural resources mapping and monitoring, infrastructure development, environmental and disaster management. The foundation of the institute was laid on 21st April 1966 under the aegis of the Survey of India as Indian Photo Interpretation Institute, or IPI, with the collaboration of the government of the Netherlands. The institute began its first postgraduate diploma program in May 1966 for mid-career professionals in 4 disciplines, namely aerial photography and photogrammetry, forestry, geology, and soils. During the initial years, International Institute for Geoinformation Science and Earth Observation ITC faculty were deputed to IPI for supporting its training programs. The Institute's present campus at Dehradun was inaugurated on May 27, 1972. Later, in July 1976, the Institute became a part of National Remote Sensing Center, NRSC. Erstwhile National Remote Sensing Agency, NRSA. The institute was renamed from IPI to IIRS in 1983. With time, new disciplines such as urban and regional studies, marine and atmospheric sciences, water resources, and geoinformatics were introduced. IIRS has been a part of the erstwhile NRSA till 2011. For ensuring efficient utilization of Earth observation systems and ISRO's forthcoming initiatives, IIRS became an independent unit of ISRO on 30th April 2011.
It gives me a great pleasure to welcome you all at Indian Institute of Remote Sensing, Dehradun. Thanks to the visionary efforts of the leadership of ISRO and ITC Netherlands, this institute was built in 1966 when remote sensing and space technology was at a primitive level in this country. Today, we are a unit of Indian Space Research Organization which is dedicated to the capacity building in the field of remote sensing and GIS. IIRS Dehradun is also actively involved in developing capacity towards remote sensing and GIS for developing nations like Africa, the countries of Latin America, countries in Southeast Asia and Pacific region. Through its ITEC program, IRS is engaged with large amount of countries and we have conducted training programs for more than 96 countries. Indian Institute of Remote Sensing, Dehradun is also actively involved in research and development activities using Earth observation data from Indian satellites for various applications.
In recent years, disaster management and distance learning programs are also introduced to further strengthen the scope of capacity building and skill development on mass scale. The capacity building programs of the Institute are designed to meet the requirements of various user segments, such as at middle and supervisory levels in government departments, fresh graduates, researchers, academia, and decision makers. The duration of courses ranges from 1 week to 2 years. In 2002, to enlarge the scope from training to education, MTech and MSc programs were started with the collaboration of Andhra University and Faculty ITC of the University of Twente, the Netherlands, respectively.
Today, Indian Institute of Remote Sensing, Dehradun has emerged as a leading center for developing capacity building in the field of remote sensing and GIS through its various educational programs like MTech, MSc and PG Diploma.
The Institute also houses the headquarters of Center for Space Science and Technology Education in Asia and the Pacific, CISTEEP, affiliated to the United Nations, and offers postgraduate program for national and international participants since its inception in 1995.
The primary objective of this center is to develop the human resources in the Asian Pacific region, wherein they can utilize the space, science, and Earth observation information for various development activities of their regions and also for disaster management. This is without looking for support from outside whenever there is a crisis in their own countries. So it is more like making them empowering to handle themselves whenever there is a requirement for development or for disaster.
The training and education programs are meticulously designed by the domain experts under the guidance of Board of Studies and Academic Council.
IRS is also the nodal center for conducting remote sensing and GIS courses for United Nations affiliated Center for Space Science and Technology in Asia and the Pacific. It is also called as UN CESTEP, and also for the ITEC program of the Ministry of External Affairs of the Government of India. Many of our trainees and students are serving as geospatial leaders in government and industry sectors.
I know the Indian has got number of satellites, and in the remote sensing ground, they are doing excellent, and we have benefited. We learned these things, and we'll apply to our department as a whole. My country will be benefited.
Presently, scientific, technical, and techno-management activities are carried out by three groups, that is, Geospatial Technology and Outreach Program Group, Geosciences and Disaster Management Studies Group, and Program Planning and Evaluation Group, with 11 departments, namely Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing, Geoinformatics, GeoWeb Services, IT and Distance Learning, Geoscience, Disaster Management Sciences, Agriculture and Soils, Forestry and Ecology, Marine and Atmospheric Sciences, Urban and Regional Studies, Water Resources, and Budget Planning and Monitoring Department. Along with this, a dedicated team of personnel and general administration and construction and maintenance division facilitate administrative and other support to the Institute. Program Planning and Evaluation Group is involved in all techno-managerial activities of IIRS and SISTEEP, including budget, projects, and student affairs monitoring.
IIRS provides training and education through research. This unique way of capacity building calls for techno management of various programs and projects undertaken at IIRS, and it has been looked after by the Program Planning and Evaluation Group, that is PPEG. PPEG also takes care about various student affairs, and in fact PPEG acts as an interface between the students and the IIRS.
In the last more than 50 years, IIRS has trained a large number of professionals and students, including participants from 96 countries.
Upon my arrival here, all the introductions also going to benefit water resource, water bodies. For my country, water resource is very important. Only 18% of water is formed inside of country, and for monitoring and analyzing water resources, we can use remote sensing and GIS and their applications.
IIRS has also started its outreach program in 2007 to strengthen the academia and user segment in space technology and its applications using online learning platforms. A countrywide network of knowledge institutions has been set up where a large number of participants is getting benefited. The online courses are offered in two modes, live and interactive mode and e-learning mode, based on the concept of learning anytime, anywhere.
Around 900 academic and government institutions across the country are networked with IRS outreach program. And every year, around 20,000 participants benefit from these programs. Along with this, we also organize special programs for various government ministries and government departments under the National Flagship Program. We further intend to extend our network nationally as well as internationally to cater to the large user segments of the society.
Research and development form an essential part of the activities of IIRS, and the Institute has carried out many pioneering studies. Recently, IIRS has designed and developed geospatial solution for forest fire reporting, consisting of an Android-based mobile app and web-based dashboard application State app enables intuitive user interface geotagging of something about forest fire. Integrated surveys in Karimnagar district, Andhra Pradesh, AMSD. Pre-feasibility studies for hydropower projects in the Himalayan region and development of methodology for landslide hazard zonation are some of the other examples. A flagship activity for development of methodology for the National Carbon Project under Eosphere program in Uttarakhand to measure the institutional research program on mountain ecosystems and services, processing and applications of microwave, hyperspectral, and high-resolution satellite data are the current thrust areas of research. During the last 5 decades, the infrastructure of the Institute has grown with many new facilities, such as state-of-the-art distance learning center, data include hotels, outdoor gymnasium, etc. IIRS campus is highly secure with round-the-clock security provided by Central Industrial Security Force, CISF.
Infrastructure and facilities in IIRS are world-class in nature. Scientists here are very knowledgeable, highly qualified, and they can extend technical support whenever required. And I feel very privileged to be here, and it's a good opportunity to carry out high-end research.
Apart from the rigorous training activities, IIRS staff and students actively participate in cultural and social activities. IIRS digital distance learning program reaching out to achieve excellence and remain in the forefront for capacity building and research in remote sensing, geoinformation science, and their applications.
Thank you so much for the very interesting video about IIRS, sir.
My pleasure.
So shall we start? So we have welcome to all for our next session, that is about sustainability of water resources system. Here, the Dr. Arpit Choksey is our expert. He is currently working as a scientist SE in the Water Resources Department, IIRS Dehradun, what we have seen in the video. So what is IIRS? So the presentation is about overview of geospatial techniques for hydrological modeling. As we have learned in previous lectures, so what is hydrology and how climate is changing, how it can affect the hydrological cycle and what components. So here's Sir Arpit sir is going to discuss about how we can use the geospatial data sets and techniques for the hydrological modeling. So Dr. Arpit Choksey, sir, please continue your presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Uttam. So, a very good afternoon to all present ladies and gentlemen. So, today we will talk about the geospatial technologies used for the hydrological modeling. So, first I will start with the very basic hydrological cycle. As you all know, that hydrology is a part of the moving cycle. So, we get the rainfall and snowfall as a part of precipitation, and some of the part of precipitation left behind as a part of interception by the plants and trees or the later interceptions. Then the remaining portion goes to the ground surface to fill the soil moisture and to cover up the groundwater storage. The left out part comes at the stream level as a part of runoff, and the remaining portion of the water over the land evaporates back to the nature as a form of cloud, and then cloud again precipitates. So it is a moving cycle. So we still don't know from where it starts and from where it will go. So all these I have encircled the parameters like precipitation, snowmelt runoff, interception, soil moisture runoff, and evaporation. They are the key component of the hydrological cycle. Although there are many factors, many different factors, thousands of factors affecting the hydrological cycles, but these 6 parameters are very crucial and very vital. They play very vital role in the hydrological cycle. So my question is, why do we need to study the hydrological cycle. So as you all know, hydrological cycles, the main input parameter is the rainfall. And because of the heavy rainfall, we have floods in many places like Bihar, West Bengal, Odisha, Bangladesh. And in the scarcity of the rainfall, we have the another disaster named as the drought, as you can see in the Maharashtra. Okay. The heavy rainfall and drought both are the disaster and affects the livelihood. So heavy rainfall causes the dam break, breaching of the embankment, drainage congestion, storm surge, glacial lake outburst, floods. So to mitigate or to take the preventing measures for the disasters, we need to study the hydrological cycles. Now, we'll talk about the natural hazards and disasters. So just I told you two terms, floods and the droughts. These are the natural disasters, natural hazards. But how these natural hazards convert to the disasters? When, like, earthquake is a natural hazard, but it will become a disaster when the earthquake comes where the people resides, where livelihood gets affected. Otherwise, it will not be a disaster. If it is a earthquake occurs in a deserted place, so we can't call as a disaster. So so likewise, the floods and droughts are the natural hazards which becomes the disasters. So can we stop them, or can we predict them, or can we manage and mitigate them? These three questions are there to give us the objective to use the hydrological modeling. So major gap areas to predict and to manage the disasters are communication, real-time information. We can't get the real-time information like extent of the flood, damage, how much damage has occurred, road connectivity, how to evacuate the people out of the disaster place, and day-to-day monitoring or alternative routes for the rescue and relief. So for all these, geospatial technology become a very important tool to fill these gap areas. So we can't stop the natural hazards or disasters, but yes, we can predict these disasters and can take the preventive measures by forecasting and predictions. But how to do that? How to take the preventive measures? So to take the preventive measure, we need to study hydrological cycle, how these natural hazards will becomes the disaster, how much volume of the flow is coming from the flood, how much area is getting inundated, how much people are getting affected. So to cater these objectives, we need to study the hydrological modeling. So hydrological modeling is basically a tool or a simplification of a real world system, where the real world system which gets the rainfall as a part of precipitation and converts the rainfall to the runoff. When this real world system is to be converted into the mathematical expressions that define the quantitative relationship between inputs and outputs like rainfall to runoff, a relationship has to be built. So this relationship built up is just known as the hydrological modeling. And why we need to do the hydrological modeling? To understand the hydrological processes, to estimate the individual hydrological component, to generate various scenarios with respect to land use change or climate change, to manage water resources for the benefit of mankind, river management, groundwater management, and to predict or mitigate the extreme hydrological events like flood forecast and protection, droughts, and low flows. But the problem is that we have, like, India is a very big country, so rainfall is the only input parameter and very crucial parameter to give in the hydrological modeling. But we have spatial variation, seasonal variation, annual variation in the rainfall data. Like you see, spatial variation, 120 mm annual average rainfall in the Rajasthan, and if we go to the Meghalaya, it is over the Meghalaya annual average rainfall is around 12,000 mm. So, can a single model fit into these hydrological processes where the rainfall is 120 mm and where the rainfall is 12,000 mm? No, the single model can't fit in both the scenarios. Likewise, the seasonal variation is there. We have rainy season, we have winters, then again the summers has been there. So a single model has to be parameterized for different seasonal conditions. Likewise, annual variations are there. Sometimes we have the drought years, sometimes we have the wet years. So we have different type of variations like spatial variation, temporal variations in the data itself. If the data itself has a lot of variation, then a hydrological model can't be stabilized. So to cater these needs, but how to input these spatial and temporal varied data. So here comes the different type of hydrological model where which type of model has to be used. So the very basic type of hydrological model is the lump model. It doesn't account for the spatial distribution of input like spatial variation, or spatial variation is not there. If we are going to use the lump model, so uh, I hope you are aware of the terms SCS curve number method or Manning's roughness coefficient. So these, suppose I am using the lump model for a region. The region, of course, is a small region where these parameters are not spatially varied. So if we are working for the smaller watershed or smaller basins, we can go for the lump model, where the heterogeneity of the parameters are not taking into account. Then another type of model is the distributed model, where the heterogeneity is there in each and every parameter of the hydrological cycle. Although it is very difficult to produce the spatial variability of the each and every parameter, so we have a third category, semi-distributed model. In this, the sum of parameters are lumped in nature and some of the parameters are distributed in nature. So for example, of the semi-distributed modeling approach, we have example SWAT model, soil and water assessment tool, HMS, hydrological engineering, hydrological model system. It is produced by HEC, Hydrological Engineering Center, United States. And for a fully distributed model, the example is WIC, variable infiltration capacity, where each and every parameter is heterogeneous in nature and spatial variability is there over the whole watershed. So for the distributed model to imply, we have to divide the watershed in a grid level. So multiple grids are there, and for each and every grid, the parameters are different. And these are the model based on the physical domain. And although apart from these type of model, we have empirical and physical models also. Empirical means a simple y is equal to mx plus c type of equations if we incorporate to build the relationship between rainfall and runoff. So it will be called as the empirical relations. Like you have seen the for soil erosion modeling, RUSLE is there, USL is there, universal soil loss equation. It is purely empirical model. So a mathematical expression is there to convert to estimate the soil erosion, annual soil loss from a watershed. And these equation will not change with the seasonal or annual variation or the temporal variation or the spatial variation. That mathematical expression is fixed and you have to imply it everywhere. So these are called as the empirical models. Likewise, we have physical model, a model which derived from equations describing conservation of mass, momentum, and the energy. If you want to go detail into these type of models, so I have given some references of the paper. I'll share the slides with you. You can go in detail by using these references. Now, I have laid down some criteria for selection of the hydrological model. How and on what basis the hydrological model has to be selected. So these are four main criteria like space discretization, hydrological processes, vegetation layer, and soil layer. So like we can see in the space discretization, we have three types of model which I have already discussed: lump type of model, semi-distributed, and distributed. And their complexity ranks are given in the third column, like low, medium, and high. Lump model complexity is very low, but accuracy is also very low. So when complexity of any model increases low to high, then the accuracy of that model is also increased from low to high. If we see the hydrological processes, and if any hydrological processes is to be quantified as an empirical approach or conceptual approach or physical approach, obviously physically based approach is the more complex but highest in the accuracy. Likewise, we have vegetation layer and soil layers. The multiple layers, if you give for any parameter, it will be complex in nature and highly accurate. So main widely used hydrological models are HMS, SWAT, MITRE, and WIC, which are globally used nowadays. So I have laid out the advantages and disadvantages of each and every model. So the output is more or less same, like HAC, SWAT, MITRE, and WIC all gives the runoff, but HAC and SWAT gives the runoff as a empirical hydrological approach. However, MITRE and WIC gives the physical based runoff calculations in terms of the hydrological processes. So the main disadvantage to use the HAC HMS is that it is a totally purely lumped model. So we can convert it into the distributed model, but nature wise it is a lump model and it is only suitable for a smaller area and for a single event. We can't use that model for a long term. So depending on the objective of the study, for what purpose you are going to set up the hydrological model, what are your objectives, what you want to quantify out of this. So it depends on the objective which model has to be used. Every model is perfect, every model is good, but their main purpose is different. So you have to identify the purpose of your study and then select the model has to be used. So mainly the geospatial, if I talk about the geospatial inputs to be used in a hydrological model, so I think there is no hydrological model used nowadays without any geospatial inputs, because manually you can't fit each and every parameter into the hydrological model and set up the model. So we need to have the application of geospatial technology to prepare the inputs. Geospatial technology can't help you in direct hydrological model, but yes, it solves you the purpose for the preparation of the data, and it helps in the analyzing of the hydrological data sets and the outputs. So main topographical geospatial inputs like elevation, we have to use the very raw and very basic input is the digital elevation model, and their derivatives like slope, aspect, flow direction, flow accumulation, drainage network, watershed boundary, longest flow path, centroidal flow path. We'll talk about these parameters in detail in later part of the lecture. And apart from the topographical inputs, we should have the meteorological input like rainfall, temperature, radiation, relative humidity, and like some of the land surface parameter like land use, land cover, soil moisture, soil map, land surface temperature, land surface albedo, evapotranspiration, snow cover area, and snow cover equivalent. Now I'll just brief you about the remote sensing and GIS. So many people are confused between the remote sensing and GIS, like they combine these terms that these two terms are the synonym of each other, or they coupled with each other. No, it is wrong. The remote sensing is totally different and GIS is totally different. Remote sensing is basically an art or science to obtain the information without even touching the object. Like from our eyes, we can see the object without even touching that. From our ears, we can hear some sound without touching the object from where the sound is coming. From our nose we can smell. So we have our inbuilt remote sensors. So these three sensors everybody is having: eyes, nose, and ears. So remote sensing is just an art to obtain the information, any type of information, from the object without coming into direct contact with them. And remote sensing uses the reflected and emitted energy and process the energy, analyze and applies that information in the form of maps or a digital data sets. And GIS is just a tool to capture, store, check, integrates, manipulates, analyze, and displaying of that remote sensing data which are spatially referenced to the earth. That's why it is called as the geographical information system. The parameters associated with the geography, it is a tool to capture and analyze that geographical data. So it is an information system, and this is normally considered to involve a specially refreshed computer database. Just a minute. Hello, can you call me after 1 hour? Can you call me after 1 hour? Yeah. So GIS is just a tool to utilize to analyze the remote sensing data. So when we talk about the water resources, so what is the role of remote sensing and GIS in estimating the uh, quantify the water resources or estimating the catchment characteristics? So you can see figure 1 just shows the layout of a watershed where the watershed divides are there, river mouth, or you can say the watershed outlet is there, groundwater equipment system is representative. When we take the picture of any watershed, so second picture, if you see second figure, the catchment as it is seen in the remote sensing image. So various uh, strike and spikes are there. So it is actually very coarser resolution. It is I think 5 kilometer resolution. So when you go into detail, so you can just identify what type of structure is there in any remote sensing image, any watershed structure is there, drainage line is there, rivers are there, plantation is there, forest is there. So many land use classification you can do with the help of the image captured by the remote sensor. And what GIS does, GIS integrates all the layers. Like we have hydro points. The third figure you can see, hydro points means the where the data is observed, drainage patterns, lines, catchment boundaries, elevation, digital elevation model, land use line cover maps, and out of integration of these 5 type of layers, we can generate a real world kind of situation in the GIS platform to further analyze the remotely sensed data. Like most of the catchment, physical and climatic velocity are geographical in nature and varies both spatially and with time. If your watershed is thousands of kilometers square of the area, you can't just go with the total station or the dumpy level and go on survey to create just a digital map. Remote sensing data will give you digital map in the form of digital elevation model. You have to just integrate in the GIS platform, overlay over the your watershed map, and you'll get the digital elevation model or the elevation information. You don't have to go for the survey to every point of the watershed. So that's the beauty of remote sensing. It covers a large area at once. Temporal resolution is very high, so you can get the images weekly, monthly, or annual level as you wish. So for to cater these objectives, we have Indian Imaging Systems. We have started Bhaskara in 1979. Before 1979, we don't have the remote sensing sensors. We have only the atmospheric sensor, or you can say the sounders and profilers. But remote sensing image capturing has been started from 1979 with the use of the Bhaskara satellite. And we have progressed well. 91 IRS 1A, 1B, list 1, 2, and sensors have come. 94 list 2 IRS P2 is there. In 95, 97 list 3 and list 4. Some enhancement of the sensors is there. So we have progressed well uh, to create the image of 1 kilometer spatial resolution. Now Cartosat can give you the 0.8 meter resolution. 0.8 meter, just to imagine the table size is 1.5 meter. So with the remote sensor in the space 36,000 kilometers away from you, you can see the table size. You can see the object as accurate as you can see with your eye of the size of 0.8 meter resolution, and it will give you the global coverage. And the remote sensing sensors are uh, variable in nature, so different applications have different specific kind of sensors. I'll give you some sensor details which are useful for the water sources. Now Just 2 slides back, I discussed the geospatial inputs to be used for the hydrological modeling. Now I have given the satellite and sensors from which sensor or satellite these parameters can be downloaded directly. You need not to generate or uh, analyze or produce the map for that. Like elevation, you can just get from the SRTM, shuttle radar topographic mission, or Ester. It will give you the 90-meter resolution. Ester will give you the 30-meter resolution, and Cartosat is the Carto DM is the Indian satellite data. It will give you the 10-meter resolution digital elevation model. Although we have 0.25 meter, but it is on for the defense use only. So for the public domain, is the special resolution available is only 10 meters. Now derivatives out of the DEM, we can generate the derivatives, different derivatives, slope, aspect, flow direction, accumulation, and so on. For the meteorological and atmospheric applications, we have TRMM, tropical rainfall measurement mission, or CPC, or INSET. INSET is the Indian satellite. INSET 3D, you heard 2 years back, it was INSET 3D was launched. In temperature, NCEP and car data is there. AIRS sensors are there, which can give you also the radiation and relative humidity. And land surface parameters you can get from the several of the satellites, like MODIS is there, Landsat is there, SWOT is there, IRS is there, AMSR is there for soil moisture and snow water complaint. So several satellites, I think 4,500 satellites are there in space for different purposes. If you go and search on for the satellite sensors used for the water sources, there are several hundreds of the sensors available. So you can download data directly. Now we'll come to the geospatial database creation. I just told you that remote sensing and GIS technology will not give you direct solution to the hydrological model, but it will cater or it will solve your purpose for the geographical data preparations, database preparation. So out of these remote sensing data and different data sets, we can just prepare the hydrological model. We can set up the hydrological model, and the hydrological modeling software is standalone model which will solve the mathematical expressions for the hydrological processes. For geodatabase creation, many tools are available, but I have just shown you the 4 types of database creation tools which are widely used and common in nature. The first one is the ArcGIS and GeoHMS. ArcGIS is a proprietary software. If you don't have that licensed version, you can go to the 4th option. It is QGIS. It is freely available, and the performance and the steps and processes are same as the ArcGIS. So ArcGIS has the plugin of the HEC GeoHMS, Hydrological Engineering Center, Geographical Hydrological Modeling System. So there is a tool which we will discuss in further slides. Then another tool is the ArcHydro tool is there, in which the terrain processing, terrain morphological modeling, watershed processing, and other things can be done. Then third one is the integrated land and water management system. This software is only developed to cater the objective for the integration of the land and water management systems. So it is a very powerful tool for the water resources, and it is also the free version. But the main drawback is there, it can't because it is an older version, so it can't take with the new formats of the GIS datasets. And QGIS, of course, is a free platform. If anybody is not having the licensed or proprietary type of GIS software, so you can go for the QGIS. Many plugins are there. You can also, this is open source software, so you can also generate your code and use as a plugin in that software. Now we'll discuss further about the first option, ArcGIS HEC GeoHMS. I'll just show you the demo what are the functions available in that hydrological modeling system, and how remote sensing data geospatial inputs are to be given to the model. So this is just a layout of the model. Like GeoHMS is the T node of that model. GIS raw GIS data has to be given. GIS further processing and other spatial processing is there in the GeoHMS platform. And then after geo processing is over, then watershed hydrology comes into the picture. So as I told you, GeoHMS will give you the prepared database, which will go to the hydrological modeling software. Like the output you can see in the figure, the grid format, SHG, HRAP, graded hydrological data, HMS input, and watershed and river characteristics. They are all the outputs of geographical hydrological modeling system. That is the geodatabase preparation tool, and these outputs will act as an input for the main standalone hydrological modeling system. So if I'll talk about the steps involved in the GeoHMS are the data collection, data assembly, terrain pre-processing, then finally the project setup is there, basin processing, stream and watershed hydrological, we can delineate with out of that. Then finally the HMS model files can be extracted. Now we talk about the data issues. I told you just that the very first and raw data to be used in the any hydrological model is the two inputs are there, the digital elevation model and the rainfall. With the help of these two inputs only, you can prepare your hydrological model. So if I'll talk about the DEM, what are the data issues in DEM for the catchment geodatabase creation? DEM is the digital elevation model which represents the elevation values in form of grid for your watershed. Suppose your watersheds is having lakhs of the grid, so lakhs of different elevation values for every grid is representative in a form of raster layer. So data issues, there are mainly 5 type of data issues are there. Low relief terrain. With low relief terrain, that means the local depressions are there. Local depressions are there which can store the water and restrict the natural drainage path. So better to use the final resolution terrain data to avoid the issue of the low relief terrain. But when final resolution terrain data has to be used, so it will be more complex in nature. So other possible approaches includes the imposing or the overlaying the published stream. If you have the drainage map readily available from any other source like Survey of India or other local agencies, so just overlay or enforce that drainage map over the DM. So the data issue which has occurred, the restriction of the natural drainage system, it will be overcome by your drainage network overlaid. The other issue is that man-made structures there, like DEM Cartoset releases once in a 5 years. The DEM once in a 5 years it releases if duration if you are using the 2013 year digital elevation model, and if any man-made structure comes after 2013, then it will not be in that data set. So it will surely create some error while digitizing the watershed maps. So the potential way to deal with this situation would be to put an artificial notch at the dam or carve a stream onto the terrain. The third issue is having the missing elevation data. So interpolation techniques, several interpolation techniques are there to fill that gap data. So that can be done, or you can use the filling of DM. That function is already available in GeoHMS platform. Now I'll talk about the subsidence and impact. This effect is just same as effect of the man-made structures. And the fifth is the subsurface flow. So it can't give you the subsurface flow because the remote sensing data can capture only the top surface of the Earth's periphery, or in microwave remote sensing data, it can just go up to 1 meter of the depth. not more than that. But subsurface flow occurs in varying depth. So this is the layout of the GeoHMS platform hydrological simulation with GeoHMS. GeoHMS is the data preparation platform, and finally HMS is the your hydrological model. So the main input are the DEM digital elevation model and the soil and land use land power map. These two inputs goes to the GeoHMS platform. Only these two input parameters are required to set up to prepare all the database for the hydrological modeling system apart from the meteorological data set. So HGHMS, what it does, it does the hydrological processing, generation of some watershed map, P and curve number graded data, and hydrological processing. The basic hydrological processing, like what is the river width, what is the side slopes are there, many reference coefficients are there. So basic hydrological processing of the data it does. Then the GeoHMS outputs will go to the HMS, and there are it will deal with the hydrological processes in detail, like loss rate, transformations, base flow separations, the hydrological routing, and reservoir outing, and how it will produce the data. Finally, hydrological simulation and validation of the simulated discharge at subbasin or basin outlet level we can do with the hydrological modeling system. Now we will further discuss in detail these methods, hydrological methods like loss rate, transformation, and others in next slides. So HMS mainly has 5 basic components like basin model, meteorological model, time series data manager, paired data manager, control specification. So in basin model, it describes the catchment and reach properties along with its hydrology. So these basin model parameters have come from the GeoHMS database preparation tool. Meteorological input you have to give directly, you can give in the form of grid or in form of a table, the raw format. And time series data, it describes and stores the time series data like discharge and rainfall, etc. Paired data stores the paired data like unit hydrograph. So unit hydrograph has two axis pairing, ordinary and abscissa, like time with the flow. And the rating curve. Rating curve is the pairing of the area and volume. And then control specification, it stores the time duration of the hydrological study. For what period, what duration, what frequency you want to set up the model. Now, the basic theoretical assumption of the HMS model is that the hydrological processes can be represented by the model parameter which reflect the average condition within a sub-area. That means that itself it is saying that it is lumped in nature. So average condition within a sub-area, it takes into account. And the model parameter represents temporal as well as spatial averages. So the basic limitation out of these assumptions are, it simulates only a single event. It is the event-based model. It can't be used for a long-term hydrological model. Suppose a rainfall event is there for 4 days, so you can use this model. But for a 1 year or for whole monsoon season, it can't be a perfect solution or the best choice. Now, the hydrological processes I discussed in previous slides, like loss methods are there, transformations are there, base flow separations are there. So we have several subcategories or some model components out of these main models. Like loss methods are having 5 different methods processes. So depending on the data sets available and depending on the objective and the output which you need, so you have to select the sub-model component or the hydrological processes to be carried forward. Like loss method is having 5 different types: initial and constant, Heck exponential, SES curve number, Holtan's method, Green-Edge method. So these 5 different hydrological processes will give you the same output, but that input parameters are different. So it depends what input parameters are available with you. Depending on the available parameters, you have to select these processes. Likewise, surface runoff method, flood routing method, they have all the subcomponents. So we'll talk about these methods in detail. The loss methods, like I told you 5 methods are available: initial and constant, Heck exponential, SES, Holtans, and Greenham. So the input parameter require in initial and constant that initial rainfall loss, constant loss, impervious area. Heck exponential needs starting loss, initial accumulated rain loss, rate of change of loss, exponent of loss, and the impervious area map. SCS curve number method, land use land cover map, HSG, that means the hydrological soil group map, and finally the curve number table. Likewise, Holton and Greenham require the different kind of inputs. So this is just a pictorial representation of the law. First of the loss method, initial and constant. So it will give you the, what you mean by loss? Loss means the loss of the precipitable water in form of the infiltration. So first initial loss has to be given, and then you assume that the loss remains constant with the whole duration of the modeling scenario. This is the pictorial example of the Heck exponential. You assume that the infiltration is reducing exponentially with the whole duration. And the third method is the SCS curve number method. I hope you have heard about it in your BTech course, SCS curve number method for hydrological modeling. So the main two types of input parameters are required here: land use land cover map and hydrological soil group. And finally, it is the curve number has to be selected on the basis of 5-day incident rainfall amount. It depends on the season, on for what season you are going to set up the hydrological modeling. If it is in dormant season and rainfall is less than 12.5 mm, so you have to select the AMC condition 1. And the table below has shown the curve numbers, like fallow soil group B is having curve number of 86. These are for the AMC condition 2. To convert AMC condition 2 to 1 or 2 to 3, there are different conversion formulas. So based on the curve number, it will give you the loss method, loss, how much infiltration will be there out of the precipitable water. Holt's method needs the growth index, like plant growth index. So it is a bit complex in nature to quantify on field the growth index and the infiltration rate mm per hour per mm, because it is variable, varying especially. So infiltration rate, you can use double ring infiltrometer to quantify the infiltration rate, but at maximum 10 or 20 locations. But if your watershed is very big, then you can't generate the infiltration rate map for a whole watershed. So, and the volume of unused soil moisture storage exponents are used, limiting rate of infiltration. So this is a simple formula, but the parameters are a bit complex in nature. Likewise, Greenham method, the hydraulic conductivity, porosity, and wetting front soil section head is required. For more detail of these parameters, you just go to any hydrological book and read about these parameters. What are these parameters? And I will tell you how remote sensing can help you to extract these parameters. If we go to the second basing component, surface runoff method, so there are also 5 methods are there: unit hydrograph, Clark's hydrograph, Snyder's hydrograph, SCS method, kinematic wave method. Like loss method, we have discussed, different input parameters are there. Here also different input parameters are there, and depending upon your data availability, you have to select the method. I'll show you the case study where which method has to be selected on the basis of parameter availability. So these are the theoretical knowledge about the methods available: Clark's method, unit hydrograph, Snyder's unit hydrograph, SCS instantaneous dimensionless hydrograph, and kinematic wave. And if you talk about the third component, that is the routing, river routing, the three widely used methods are available: Muskingum method, Muskingum method, modified pulse method. So the input parameters are like number of sub-reaches, coefficient of storage, weighing factor, channel length, and channel flow. Now I'll tell you which method has remote sensing component input parameters you can generate. Like loss methods, there are two methods, are two subcomponents of hydrological processes are there, which can have the remote sensing direct component as the input parameter. Like SCS curve number method, three types of parameters are required: land use land cover map, soil map, that means the hydrological soil group map, and finally the curve number map. So land use map you can directly get from the remote sensing data. You can get the unclassified image or Landsat bands. So you can generate the FCC, that is false color composite, and combination of the RGB red, green, and blue band. But why it is called as a false color composite? Because it is not actually the red, green, and blue. It is red, green, and NIR. Likewise, in the Holtan's method, growth index, the plant growth index, it is directly related to the NDVI, normalized difference vegetation index. This is also directly can be computed with the help of remote sensing data or land use land cover map. Further, in surface runoff method, if we go for the SCS curve number method, land use map and hydrological soil group map can be directly give from the remote sensing data. Apart from the remote sensing data, there are several GIS components are there which can help you to set up the hydrological model, like digital elevation model, and the derivatives can be generated with the help of GIS, like slope, aspect, flow direction, flow accumulation, drainage map, stream network, curve number. Curve number is the combination of the land use and hydrological soil group map, and length of channel you can calculate with the help of your digital elevation model, and watershed delineation you can do to extract the drainage network. Travel time also you can calculate the time of concentration for any watershed. So for these detail how we have got to input the parameters in a hydrological modeling system, I'll just show you the case study for the flood modeling with hydrological modeling system over the Mahanadi River Basin. As you all know, Mahanadi River Basin is a very big basin. It is having the area around 35,000 square kilometers. So we can't just manually set up the hydrological model without the application of the remote sensing and GIS. It only is possible to set the hydrological modeling with the help of the remote sensing and GIS input parameters. So this is the methodology we have used for the digital elevation model hydrological processing. We have used GTOPO 30 DM, which is of 1 kilometer of the resolution. Why we have chosen the 1 kilometer resolution? Because the Mahanadi River Basin size is 35,000 around kilometers squares of the area. If we go for the final resolution like 5 meter, 25 meter, or 90 meter resolution, so crores or numbers of the grades will be there. So it is very difficult to compute or analyze the thousands crores number of grids, and the spatial variability also has to be given to the model. So for that, to ease that purpose, we have used 1 kilometer of the spatial resolution for the digital elevation model. And FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, global land cover map has been used in place of the land use map. Then FAO soil data has been used to create the soil map, soil texture map, and to reproduce that soil map into the hydrological soil group. Then geospatial data integration of these maps will, along with the HMS software, hydrological modeling software, will give you the surface runoff. Finally, the flood routing has to be there, and the output is in the form of, don't confuse with the surface runoff and the discharge. Surface runoff is the amount of runoff or the part of rainfall generated over the surface and remains there. But if you have to quantify the runoff at the river level, so it will become a discharge. Discharge means the amount of volume flows per unit time. Amount of flow per unit time. So for that, to convert that surface runoff generated over the surface, to convert this into discharge, the flood routing techniques are there. Finally, simulation has been done and resultant analysis has been done with the use of the observed data. So these are the physical parameters generated from the digital elevation model. This is the very first step of any hydrological database preparation tool. The filling of the sinks, that means the local depression and local restriction of the drainage path has to be filled, or if missing elevation data is there in some of the grids, so interpolation technique has to be applied for filling of that local sinks or local depressions. Then flow direction has to be computed. Different algorithms are there in GIS platform like D8 or D infinity algorithm are there to generate the flow direction. Then flow accumulation has to be generated, stream definition, watershed delineation, and watershed aggregation has to be carried out. So this is the raw DM G230 we have used of spatial resolution 1 kilometer. And these are the derivatives out of DM, like you can see flow direction map, flow accumulation map, stream grid map we have generated with the use of GeoHMS platform. And for the flow accumulation for stream definition, we have to give the number of cells to initiate a stream. That is called the stream thresholding. That is, this is the number of cells you want to produce the stream at a particular grade. So that number has to be defined. That number means if I'll give, if I am giving the number 212.71, sorry, 201217 cells. That means if whenever this number of cells contribute to a single point, then this point will be act as a stream, part of a stream network. Otherwise, it will be ignored. If I'll give the very smaller number, like 15 cells, I'll give for a larger watershed. So every 15 cell, it will generate a node, which will be defined as the stream network. So our stream network is a very dense network, and the computation time is very large. So it depends on the objective and the size of watershed to select the number of cells to produce the stream network. Finally, watershed grid successfully converted into polygon shape theme. So stream link grid map has been prepared. Then watershed polygon map out of this stream network has been prepared. So this is the whole watershed polygon map. This is not the watershed. This is only the polygon map of the sub watershed. Once you define the outlet or basin boundary, if you have from other source, then it is okay. Otherwise you just define the outlet. It will give you the watershed boundary out of that sub watershed polygon map. Although these watershed boundaries or watershed delineation is perfect in the hydrological modeling sector, but you need to correct sometimes. So just for example, there is no correction required in this map, but I'll just show you how correction has to be done. If no stream has to be shown in this encircled, red marked encircled area. So if you want to merge these two sub-basins to create a stream, so there are several options available in HMS software to merge this sub-watershed or divide the sub-watershed, or different characteristic change parameterization you have to do. So you compare this previous map and the corrected map. I have merged these two watersheds to create a stream. Next, the calculation of the centroidal flow path is there. So for that purpose, DM is the raw input. Terrain processing has to be done. Drainage map, watershed map, gauge location. If it is available, gauge location has to be given. That means the observed data location. Then merge and split of the sub watersheds and the associated data has to be analyzed. Then finally, the river length, river slope, longest flow path, centroidal flow path has to be calculated. So this is the longest flow path map, and there are several methods available to choose the basin centroid. Bounding box, elevation method, flow path method. So for different purposes, different methods are available. We have used in this project the flow path method to calculate the centroidal point, which is the center of the longest flow path within the sub-basin. This is our centroidal flow path map. Then finally, routing method has to be defined. So we have defined Musinam-Kung method, where the input parameters required are bottom width, side slope, and Manning roughness coefficient. Manning roughness coefficient, you just assume, we can assume some the initial values, then after the stabilization of the model, it will change spatially as well as temporally. And for bottom width of the river and side slope of the river, the GIS is efficiently used. So if we use finer resolution of the digital elevation model, the bottom width can be easily manually calculated, or side slope is also calculated by the application of the TM derivatives as a soil. So these are the some standard parameter we have extracted out of the remote sensing and data with the help of GIS tool. Then finally, the curve number grid generation. As I told you, the curve number grid generation require two type of input parameters: soil hydrological group map and the land use. Mere integration of these two maps will provide you the curve number grid. Like this is the land use land cover map shown, and out of these, every land use land cover map has different curve number values depending on the A, B, C, D hydrological soil hydrological group. So integration of these soil map with the land use map will give you the union of soil and land use polygon map, and from the table that curve number has to be overlaid over this map. So your curve number grid map has been generated. Finally, TR55 methodology is there for the computation of the watershed time of travel. The TR55 methodology has been defined around 50 years back by United States Department of Agriculture. So still HMS model is using that only methodology, because for the, as I told you, HMS is the event based model. For event based model, that methodology is still working as perfect. No advancement has been taken place. So for the watershed time of travel computation, that Excel file is automatically generated in the HMS software, GHMS software. Only we have to fill the row number 7, 2 years 24 hour rainfall. As and when you put the rainfall data here, it will calculate the watershed time of travel, and along with the other parameter like channel slope is there, Manning roughness coefficient is there, flow length, weighted parameter, water course slope, average flow velocity, land slope, and other parameter which will be further used in the hydrological modeling system. Out of this, after this step, this TR55 methodology, you just have to export these database to the HMS symbology, because HMS can't recognize any format. It will recognize only the format which is exported by the GHMS Geo database creation tool. So we have to export to the HMS platform. So you can see the basin file, HMS file, meteorological component. All the components are exported to some directly, which will be used by the HMS. Now, only the input parameter we have used for the GeoHMS platform is DEM, digital elevation model, which you can get from the remote sensing data, land use map, which you can get from the remote sensing data, soil map you can get from the remote sensing data. So apart from these three parameters, we have not used any single other parameter which cannot be extracted from the remote sensing or GIS technology. So as of now, we have not used any field data. Further also, if you have rain gauge in your watershed or meteorological station in your watershed, you can directly take this data and incorporate as a form of grid or tabulated formula in the hydrological modeling system. But I'll show you here the climatic parameter or meteorological parameter, how it can give from the remote sensing based data sets, like meteorological data processing from CPC. This is the Central Processing Center or Climatic Processing Center. So when we download, you have to just download. You don't have to play with the some algorithm to generate the rainfall map and other things. Already these maps are posted at their respective websites. You have to just download for the area you want to set up the hydrological modeling, or if you want to meteorological data for some other purpose. So first step is the CPC precipitation data. I have just downloaded the map, the data in a map format, georeferenced it with the latitude longitude of my area, and projection system has to be same. Then subsetting of the area as per my study area, then layer setting, zonal statistics, and other processing has to be done. Then finally the data has been exported to the Excel sheet, or you can provide it into the head decision support system, DSS. So this is the image format, the raw data, CPC raw data, and after georeferencing, the basin comes somewhere here, and after subsetting the area, we have the precipitation map, rainfall map for the Mahanadi River basin. Then it will be the data is exported to the HEC DSS, decision support system, or you can also provide this data in an Excel format in tabulated manner. Then finally, after inputting these four parameters, now it has become four: DEM, land use, soil, and meteorological parameters, rainfall. After this input, that model is almost set up. That exported basin manager, paired manager, time series manager, all these things are imported to the hydrological modeling system. Then methods has to be selected. There are 5 methods I have already discussed. The method has to be selected. So I have defined this project for the use of the soil conservation service curve number method. For transformation, I have used Clark unit hydrograph and SES unit hydrograph method. For flow routing, I have used kinematic wave and Muskingum method, where the parameterization is very limited. So hydrological parameters of Clark unit hydrograph transformation and kinematic wave routing method, it has already taken from the TR55 methodology. You need not to input any of the parameter further. Like parameter is SCS curve number with Muskingum routing method. Only the impervious map has to be given. So impervious map can also be downloaded from the internet, from any of the sources, or you can generate your own map if you have the impervious land use land cover map. Then base flow you have to assume as a constant monthly or exponential decay with the season, or there are many base flow separation technique like fish base method, variable slope method. So I have used here the constant monthly method. And finally, the simulation has to be done. The different scenarios you can just generate. Like I have changed material. The basin model is same in both the simulations. Control specifications are different. In first simulation, I have used the simulation time period from January. Control specifications are same. Only the meteorological models are different, because in first model only CPC 11 kilometer graded rainfall data has to be given, and in other simulation I have some field data, so I have incorporated or enforced the field data for the as a rainfall input. So I have different input rainfall heatographs, and finally the simulations and observed discharge. If I'll compare, so you can see the above result. The observed hydrograph is not actually matching with the simulated hydrograph. However, in the second simulation, it is the best result out of the all simulations. Why? Because some field data has been enforced as a meteorological input parameters. So if you have some field data observed, you can just incorporate in the hydrological model to enhance or produce more accuracy for your results. So this is all about the hydrological modeling system. Finally, so as a summary, I'll just state it. We have started from the DM hydroprocessing, DM pre-processing. We have used in between land use map and soil map to create the curve number grids, and meteorological inputs has been given. So these four main inputs have been given in the hydrological modeling software. And finally, the output we have in the form of hydrograph. So this is the application of hydrological modeling system. Now further, I'll show you some of the case study which we have done in a very limited time. Like you all must be aware that in 2013, Kedarnath disaster has happened, which has taken several of lives, several of the infrastructure has been damaged. So we have just set up the hydrological modeling within 4 hours of the time. Just it is just possible with the use of the remote sensing and geospatial technology. Otherwise, in 4 hours, we can't even go out of our city to go for the survey. So, for Kedarnath disaster, we have taken all the input data from the satellites. Like this is the 3 types of DM we have taken from the Mandakini. Mandakini river is the actually river. Mandakini river, so Cartosat DM, Ester DM, SRT and DM. 10 meter, 30 meter and 90 meter, 3 types of DM we have taken. And we have generate scenario for all these 3 types of DM to just see which type of DM will give you the better accurate results which are matching with the media reports of the water level. So these are the hydro processing. It is also use the hydrological modeling system HMS. So hydrological processing has been done to generate flow direction, accumulation, water circulation, drainage maps, and other things. Finally, the time of travel has been calculated. You can see the time of travel is TC, constant time of concentration is 0.36, 0.29. That means the basin area is around 4 lakh meter squares, and time of concentration is very low because it is very steep slope is there, around 110 or 120% slope is there. So that's why the time of concentration is very low. Finally, we have generated these things, and we have finally the output that the runoff peak has occurred on the day of 16 June midnight. So that result is matches with the media reports for water level occurs. So if we know, I'm just showing you this case study. Why? Because if any vulnerable lake or glacial lake is there in any part of the country over some the city over some of the part of the city or some vulnerable places, so we can just do this kind of study before. Why to wait for the disasters? So before time, we can just generate these type of scenarios, keep it with us, or send to the ministry to take the preventive measure. If this type of disaster will going to happen in future, what will be the damage and how much area will be getting affected? So ministries or departments can take the preventive measures to just mitigate the effects of the disaster. Disaster we can't ignore, but we can just take the preventive measures and reduce the effect. Now the third of the case study is from the Solani watershed, in which the empirical model SCS curve number method has been used. So the basic remote sensing data is the LULC map, soil map, and digital elevation model. Rainfall data we have taken from the field. So this is the mathematical expression. Q runoff is equal to P minus 0.2s divided by P plus 0.2s. S is the potential maximum retention that can be quantified with the help of the curve number, and curve number can be extracted with the help of land use and soil map that remote sensing can provide you. So to set up this kind of model, you don't need any ground data. You just need remote sensing data sets as an input parameter. So this is the methodology: flow direction, accumulation, drainage map generation, network extraction, and finally the outlet selection, catchment. So this is the catchment delineated. This is the flow direction map, accumulation map, and this is the finally watershed, which we have delineated with the use of the modeling software. this outlet we have taken as the Roorkee. And this is the land use land cover map. So you can see the forest covers around the 30% of the hilly area, and agriculture is in the more than 50% of the parts. Likewise, 5 types of soil has been found out of the field work. Field work is necessary. I am not telling you just ignore the field work. Field work is necessary at each of the point of the hydrological modeling setup, because remote sensing data you have to check the accuracy of the remote sensing data. Accuracy assessment has to be done for the land use land cover map, soil map. So for the accuracy assessment to parameterize or to further replicate your map or to change the map, you have to go for the field work. So this is the soil map. After the field work, we have changed some of the land use classes which we have missed when we are using the remote sensing based land use map. Finally, land use map and soil map showing the statistics. And these are the curve number maps, CN2. We have converted CN2 to CN1 and CN2 to CN3. So these are the conversion formulas. And these are the CN1, CN2, CN3, and finally the weighted area average CN map has been prepared. Rainfall also we have given in form of the raster map. We have some field rain gauge available at some of the fixed places. So we have just converted into the raster format by the simple what you call the rainfall interpolation technique by making the polygon. These are the seasonal studies we have done for the wet season, dry season, and these are the annual study for different type of scenarios. For different type of scenarios, we have this is the just experimental study we have done for the annual level, different seasons, different type of curve number has been used, different type of formulas has been used. So finally, we conclude that the lower rainfall for the lower rainfall areas, the Shapley and Williams approach estimates runoff more than the traditional Huang's approach. Heavy storm traditional approach predicts runoff higher than the Shapley, Williams, and Huang approach. So this type of comparative statement can be generated for the further future use. If something happens in that area, so we actually know which methodology and which parameterization, which method has to be incorporated in that time of modeling. So this type of comparative statements can be also prepared. These are the maps generated with the help of different methodologies for different watersheds. And finally, the subsurface runoff table is there for the Solani watershed. Now I'll show you some of the beauty of the nature and complexity of the nature, why we need to use the remote sensing and GIS technology for the flood modeling of a hydrological modeling of a drought assessment. So these are some of the views of the flood affected areas of Uttarakhand, which you can't access because of the terrain, because of the location. Some of the parts in the Gangotri glaciers, and some of the parts are near the Kedarnath disaster, where the survey is not possible at all. So to extract the maps or the information about these kind of areas, we have to use the remote sensing technique. Like flood prone area of Uttarakhand as seen. This is the remote sensing image of flood prone area. Govind Ghat, Hanuman Chatti is there, and 3D data when the digital elevation model is overlaid by the land use land cover map and soil map. So it will be a 3D data set. You can just visualize how the area is getting affected. Like this is, you can see the Ghansali is there. This is the digital elevation remote sensing image, and there the infrastructure is overlaid. So you can see the Ghansali city is settled just on the mouth of the death. So a river, a heavy flow river is there at the outskirts of the Ghansali city, and the flood occurs, so it will damage all the structures present in the Ghansali city. It is in the very low-lying area like Srinagar, Uttarakhand, Uttarkashi, and some of the upstream area. This is the Mandakini River up to Devprayag. And out of these pictures I have shown you the flood affected areas of Uttarakhand, we can just generate the flood inundation maps or flood prone area vulnerability maps. We can generate with the use of the hand tool, height above nearest drainage. Nothing, you just need the digital elevation model and the uh, and assume some water level. Some flood is coming with that particular volume or with particular rate. So what will be the affected area? So it is when you have the drainage network, so you just assume that the out of drainage network 5 meter water level will rise. So you can see the 5 meter water level if rises, what part of the city or what part of your watershed is getting inundated. So this kind of uh, prediction or forecasting systems can be developed beforehand of the disasters. Like we have generated for the flood early warning system in the northwest Himalayan ecosystem. Similar studies we have done with the for the Brahmaputra River Division. Brahmaputra, you all know, is the biggest uh, river. India Varis Basin. The basin area is around 5,80,000 kilometers square. And total length is 2.9 kilometers. This is the Indian part. 916 kilometers. 916 kilometer, and total length of the river is 29,000 kilometers, including the Tibet and China part. We have just set up the hydrological modeling system, and we have generated scenarios with that how the area will be getting affected when the flood conditions will arises. So we can do several type of integrations also. Saral Altica satellite is there which can provide you the water level, and out of the water level, if you have the rating curve for any river, you can just generate the rating curve. Rating curve, if you have, you just convert that water level produced by the satellite images to the discharge. Altimeter, Saral Altica is the satellite which can give you the altimeter. So these are the altimeter tracks are there across the river. Then finally the hydrodynamic model can be set it up. So where the boundary condition of the rating curve, you can meet it. For various purposes, we have different Indian or foreign centers are there. So if we talk about the Indian Earth observation missions, so the near future, recently we have launched different satellites like ResourceSat 2. CatSat is the satellite which is having the inbuilt spectrometer of the KU band, which will provide directly snow water equivalent, and it is uh, for the purpose of the polar regions, Antarctica and Arctica. Arctic region is already been covered. Megatropics it is. I'll give you the detail in further slides for the megatropics. OceanSat 3 is there. Spectrometer, ResourceSat 2 R, list 3, list 4. AWIPS. AWIPS is the sensor which we have the wide field sensor is there. So 250 kilometers of the area comes in a single screen capture. Cartosat 2C 80 centimeter resolution. Cartosat 3 we have at best 30 centimeter resolution. So there are several different satellites. There is the foreign satellite GRACE 1 and GRACE 2. The full form is GRACE Recovery and Climatic Experiment. It is launched in 2002 to study the terrestrial water storage of the Earth's ecosystem. So these are the pairing of the two identical spacecraft flying about 220 kilometers apart in a polar orbit, 5 kilometers above the Earth, and as you know that where the mass is large, so the gravity acceleration due to gravity is increases. When you go above the Earth, it is decreases. When you go below the Earth, it decreases. So it depends on the Earth's mass. Where the mass is more, the gravitational field is more according to the gravitational law of motions given by Newton. So it depends. It works on that uh, philosophy only, where the mass is more and the satellite spacecrafts are 220 kilometers apart. So the one of that pendulum kind of uh, feature has been created. So it quantifies the gravity and then indirectly quantifies the terrestrial water storage because of that the Earth's mass is more at some places. Like MODIS is moderate resolution imaging spectral radiometer. It's give you several type of outputs at different spatial resolutions, 250 kilometers, 500 meters, 1 kilometer spatial resolution, and the temporal resolution is very good, 1 or 2 days. These are the parameters available. Atmospheric parameters, if you want to know aerosol product, precipitable water clouds, atmospheric profiles, and for land, several parameters are there like surface reflectance, land surface temperature, leaf area index, NDVI, vegetation fractions. Cryospheric parameters are there, ocean parameters are there. So many 36 spectral bands are there. So many things can be easily covered out of the MODIS satellite. Now comes to the Indian satellites like Megatropic. We have it is a satellite mission to study the water cycle in the tropical atmosphere. It is been launched in 2011. So that rainfall estimation can be done out of this megatropics. Further, Ocean Shed 2 is there for surface winds, wind speed. You can calculate out of this satellite products. Spectrometer is there to determine the ocean surface level and water level in the rivers also. Coral is the altimeters satellite with Argos and Altica. It is a joint mission with the France CNES, and it is for the retrieval of the water level out of the any water body. INSET 3D is the meteorological satellite. It provides you the uh, storm warning systems, other meteorological parameters. ESMOS is a NASA's satellite which gives directly the soil moisture. As of now, we don't have any satellite in Indian Earth observation system which will provide you the soil moisture and ocean salinity. So ESMOS is the satellite recently launched in last decade, 2009, which will provide soil moisture and ocean salinity and improves our understanding of the water cycle further. So that's all from my sides. I insist you all to subscribe the IRS YouTube channels, IRS ISRO Digital Content and EduSet IRS Dehradun. There are 2 YouTube channels where several of the informative lectures are there. And ISRO also hosts the EduSet programs which are live and interactive in nature, and otherwise the classroom programs are there. So contents are given in the YouTube channel. You all can subscribe as a learner. It is free service from the IARS. You can join the EduSet program and learn. If you want to have a certification program, you just merely have to pay some 300 or 400 the certification fee. Otherwise, as a learner, it is a free content. So thank you all for listening patiently. Dr. Uttam?
Yeah, thank you so much for your informative
If
Yeah,
anybody
sorry.
is having any query, so just raise.
Yeah, if you have any question about the presentation, about the remote sensing, about the hydrological modeling, about the data set of geospatial data set or techniques, so if you want to know about something else, so you can just type on the chat. So Dr. Arpit will answer your question. I think you have explained everything, so that's why they don't have any question. So
Thank you.
really, it was very informative session, and we learned many things about hydrological modeling, what is hydrological modeling, and what kind of data is required, and how we can obtain those data set, and how we can use in terms of remote sensing, just like how we can, if we don't have a real-time data set, how we can obtain the remote sensing data set for the hydrological modeling and all. So this is very informative for us. So I would like to invite our HOD, Professor Sandeep Srivastava, for vote of thanks. Our HOD, sir.
Thank you, participants. And thank you, Dr. Arpit, also for giving a very informative lecture in this session. Thank you, participants, also for cooperating. And thank you, my coordinators, to complete the very good FDP, the very informative FDP for the faculties. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for the opportunity you have given to interact with the people of my home state.
Yeah, actually, Dr. Arpit is from Jabalpur.
I see.
Yeah, I'm also from Jabalpur, and he's my senior, college senior.
Thank you, Dr. Uttam Puri, for conducting
thank-
such a beautiful FDP, such a informative FDP.
Thank you so much, sir. This is because of you only. You have just encouraged us to
It's a
plan
matter
this
of
like that.
department. Yes.
Yeah,
It's
it's a
matter of
combination
department,
effort.
and it's a good initiative as far as the department is concerned.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Vikram also. Thank you, Samit Diwan sir. And thank you all participants.
Thank you so much, all. Thank you so much. And thank you, Arpit sir. Thank you, Dr. Shivam is there. Thank you so much for giving the expert lectures. And thank you so much, Dr. Visals, Dr. Ashutosh Sharma, for very informative lectures. And for the participants, I will circulate the documents or some just like PPT and PDFs about the presentation later on, and you will get your certificate after the feedback form. So feedback link will be circulated from the Professor Diwan sir. He will circulate in the WhatsApp group, and within 2 to 3 days you will get your certificate after the feedback. So Professor Diwan sir, yes,
I will send the feedback on the email which they have
Okay.
provided, because that will be better. Okay, sir.
Okay. And Dr.
I
Arpit
will
sir,
be-
you want to say something?
I will be sending the link of feedback on email.
Sure.
Yes, sir. Sorry. Arpit sir is saying something. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, sir. I just want to make an announcement that if anybody wants to practice this HMS software, so I can provide the example data set and the step-by-step hands-on also. So if anybody is interested, just contact me over my email.
Okay, thank you, sir. A very nice presentation, and I thanks everyone for participating in this event, especially our expert, uh, Goswami sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
You can say
Dr.
the vote
Uttam
of
sir,
thanks.
it has been very informative session. Myself, Vivek Rangnekar.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
It is very informative session and presented so beautifully and so fluently that it never get any hurdle going inside our brains and in our hearts. It presentation was very smooth and fluent. And I want to congratulate Dr. Arpit for such a beautiful presentation in very short period of time, but he has covered mostly all of the topics so brilliantly and so properly managed that it is really awesome to have such a knowledgeable person with us for such FDPs. We will look forward for some more FDPs from him, and as he has also assured about the his cooperation for various types of informations if anybody is interested for further courses. So that is so kind of him, and we are really thankful to him and Dr. Uttam Goswami. You have arranged for it. So thanks a lot. We are benefited by it very much.
Thank you,
sir. HOD sir is there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Sir, if you want to say something,
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
Sir, if you want to say something.
Thank you to Dr. Arpit, and I'm looking forward. I will send some master's students in your institute.
Yeah, sure, sir.
Some of the students are interested. I will send my UG students for masters in your institute.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. They are welcome, sir.
Sir, thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. So take care. Stay safe. Okay.
Stay home.
Stay home. Okay. Thank you so much. So should I end?
Okay, sir. So I think we can continue this FDP, and thanks all for joining. It's a very nice experience for us also.
Yeah, it was very experiencing event.
So this is also our first online FDP, and it's very informative. All the experts were good. Okay, thanks all of you,
Okay. Thank you
all
so
the
much.
participants.